The British military hired a stage magician to hide an entire army from Hitler. The British military did not invite Jasper Maskelyne to the front lines because they believed in magic, they welcomed him because they had run out of options and faced total annihilation in North Africa. In the blistering heat of the desert, traditional steel and gunpowder failed against Erwin Rommel's tank divisions, forcing the High Command to look to the theatrical stage for salvation. This is not a simple story of clever tricks and painted canvas, but a dark chronicle of how one man weaponized human perception to rewrite the rules of modern warfare, leaving a legacy that deception still shrouds. To understand his triumph, one must understand how he turned the desert into a theater of death. The traditional narrative credits British military genius for holding the Suez Canal, but the real defense relied on a bizarre assembly of stagehands, painters, and chemists known as the Magic Gang, who operated in the shadows of the North African campaign to turn the tide of the war. Maskelyne did not fight with bullets, he manipulated the human eye, understanding that a pilot flying at 200 miles per hour relies entirely on fleeting shadows and familiar silhouettes to drop his payload, making perception the ultimate battlefield of the 20th century. He gathered a team of misfits, including a chemist who could brew artificial fog, a scenic artist who could mimic the texture of desert sand on sheet metal, and a stage carpenter who could build empires out of scrap wood, transforming the desolate Egyptian landscape into a giant theatrical stage that looked terrifyingly real from thousands of feet in the air. The British commanders viewed Maskelyne as a charlatan, demanding a demonstration that would prove his illusions could withstand the harsh, unforgiving light of the African sun, which prompted him to make a claim so preposterous it nearly cost him his commission. He promised to make the entire Suez Canal completely disappear from the night sky. He achieved this impossible feat not by hiding the water, but by blinding the attackers using 21 powerful searchlights fitted with spinning, multifaceted mirrors that created a massive, swirling wall of light that stretched for miles across the horizon, completely disorienting the enemy pilots. A disorienting strobe effect engulfed German pilots flying overhead, rendering them incapable of locating their targets and forcing them to drop their bombs harmlessly into the empty desert sands while the vital shipping lane remained completely untouched. The success of this experiment instantly converted the skeptical generals, who immediately granted Maskelyne the resources to manufacture hundreds of dummy tanks, fake railway tracks, and even decoy soldiers made of painted burlap, creating a massive, shifting matrix of deception across the desert that kept the enemy guessing where the next blow would land. Yet, his greatest challenge was not hiding a canal, but rather the terrifying task of making the entire harbor of Alexandria vanish while a real German bombing fleet flew directly toward the defenseless city with orders to reduce it to rubble. On a moonless night in 1942, Maskelyne stood on the docks of Alexandria, listening to the distant drone of German engines, knowing that thousands of lives and the entire Mediterranean fleet depended on a series of plywood structures built 3 miles down the coast. He had constructed a massive, scale model replica of the Alexandria harbor in Marriott Bay, complete with fake lighthouses, dummy buildings, and controlled explosives designed to mimic real bomb hits, turning a barren stretch of coastline into an elaborate theatrical stage that fooled the Luftwaffe. As the first German bombers arrived, Maskelyne ordered the real harbor to go completely dark, while his team ignited the decoy harbor, creating a spectacular illusion of a city under devastating attack that lured the enemy pilots away from their true target and saved thousands of lives. The German pilots, seeing the raging fires and explosions in the decoy bay, unleashed their entire payloads on the empty sand, leaving the actual, highly strategic port of Alexandria completely untouched, which allowed Maskelyne to prepare for his ultimate test against General Erwin Rommel. Maskelyne designed a collapsible wooden frame called the Sunshield, which fit over a Crusader tank to make it look exactly like a standard supply truck from the air, while simultaneously disguising the tank's tracks to look like ordinary tire ruts, effectively hiding an entire armored division in plain sight. To complete the illusion, he constructed a fake water pipeline made of empty petrol cans that advanced southward at a precise, slow rate, convincing German intelligence that the British attack was weeks away from being ready, and that any threat from the north was non-existent, which allowed the Allies to execute a devastating surprise assault. When the British finally struck, they did so from the north with overwhelming force, catching the German army completely off guard and turning the tide of the war in North Africa, proving that armies win wars as much in the minds of the enemy as on the battlefield of blood and iron. But when the war ended and the smoke cleared, Maskelyne returned to England expecting a hero's welcome, only to discover that the British government had classified his operations, systematically erasing his name from the official histories of the war and leaving him with no proof of his extraordinary deeds. The tragic irony of Jasper Maskelyne's life was that the very skills that made him a master of deception ultimately destroyed his own credibility, leaving him a forgotten footnote in military history. Because the government classified his work, he spent his remaining years desperately trying to convince a skeptical public of his wartime achievements, publishing a sensationalized memoir that historians quickly dismissed as wild exaggeration, which alienated his former colleagues and led the War Office to officially downplay his genuine, highly effective contributions, leaving him to fight a losing battle for his own legacy. In his final years, isolated in Kenya and battling severe alcoholism, Maskelyne realized that the ultimate price of creating perfect illusions is that no one believes you when you finally decide to tell the truth. His life became a tragic performance where the line between reality and showmanship was forever blurred, leaving him trapped inside a maze of his own design, a magician haunted by the ghosts of his own unseen audience. The military records eventually revealed that while Maskelyne did not work alone, his theatrical genius provided the crucial psychological framework that allowed the Allied forces to weaponize doubt on a massive scale, proving that armies win wars as much in the minds of the enemy as on the battlefield of blood and iron. This leaves us with a chilling realization about the nature of history itself. When governments lock the archives and the witnesses die, the boundary between a brilliant military strategist and a master charlatan becomes the greatest illusion of all, leaving us to wonder if we will ever know the true extent of his magic, or if the truth has vanished forever. If we can no longer separate Jasper Maskelyne's genuine wartime triumphs from his self-made myths, did the master magician actually outsmart the German army, or did he simply perform his greatest illusion on history itself, leaving us to wonder where the theater ends and where the cold, hard truth of war begins?